Happy holidays and Merry Quora Christmas. Today I'll be answering your UX design questions from Quora. There will be 10 questions, so feel free to use the timestamps to skip to the questions that most interest you. And at the end I'll tell you why I've recently focused on UX videos despite the rant in my starting over video. Okay, so the first question is, can UI UX designers work completely remotely? The answer is yes, and now we've pretty much reached the point where we have no choice but to work remotely. And this is all fine by me because I'm a bit of a homebody who functions best hiding in a cave away from the rest of the world. Funny enough, 2 years ago I told my coworkers during meetings that we didn't need to be physically present to do any of the jobs that we did, and they sort of gave me the side eye. Okay, question number 2. How do I switch from an architect to a UX designer? Every aspiring UX designer needs one thing to become a viable candidate for a job. That is an online portfolio of projects. Unfortunately, that one thing is actually 4 to 7 things because you'll actually need 3 to 6 portfolio projects in addition to the website you'll put them on. If you're starting from scratch, the first thing you'll want to do is study the basic principles of UX design. Find reading material, UX tutorials, UI tutorials, study real digital products, and browse portfolio websites like Dribbble and Behance. Your advantage as an architect is that you already understand the fundamentals of design processes and you have at least a 4-year degree. There's also the fact that architecture is fundamentally user-centered. After all, you're building things for people. And after you've done some basic study, you'll want to begin applying those skills to portfolio projects. Start by redesigning an existing app or website, and then eventually design your own digital product completely from scratch. Once your portfolio has some completed projects, start applying for jobs, and just continue to improve until luck finally tips in your favor. Okay, so on to number 3. How can UI UX design influence the success of a mobile app? Okay, I'm going to cheat and avoid the mobile part of the question because I believe the same philosophy applies across all devices. UI UX design could be the difference between users choosing one app over a competitor. Think about MySpace versus Facebook around 2008 for those of you who are old enough to remember, and oh boy, do I feel really old saying that. Back then, when you went onto a friend's MySpace profile, you had to deal with a cluttered interface filled with obnoxious flashing graphics and their terrible taste in music that automatically played as soon as you entered their page. One of my UX pet peeves is media with sound that plays automatically. Don't do this if you're building an app or website. Just don't. And because Facebook at the right place at the right time decided to create a cleaner, more uniform interface, they've grown to the point where they're now facing lawsuits for anti-competitive practices. So yes, UI UX design matters. Okay, so we've reached number 4. Do you need to be good at art to be a UX designer? Funny you should ask. Prior to entering the world of UX, I got a bachelor's degree in art after getting 2 associate's degrees in art-related majors. So, few people are better qualified to tell you that all of those art skills are useless in UX. Now, I should say UX designers will benefit from having good aesthetic tastes and a generally creative mind capable of conceiving novel solutions to problems. And you should have visual communication skills that will enable you to illustrate those solutions, but you don't need to be good at art. Number 5. What are the top UX design trends that one can follow? My answer is don't follow trends. Just study the fundamentals of UX design until you understand why they exist. But if you must, then go on to Dribbble and Behance to browse projects and take note of the designs that appeal to you. You could also search UI and UX on Pinterest and create boards of projects that catch your eye. Number 6. Is coding required for UX design in 2021? No, but it's nice to know because it'll enable you to communicate with developers more effectively. And as a designer, that's the real skill you need that's related to code, the ability to communicate with those who are going to actually do the coding. Okay, number 7. What are the technical skills required to become a good UX designer in 2021? Truthfully, not many. You just need to know how to use basic forms of digital communication and some industry standard design program. I'll use the company I'm contracting for as an example. For communication, we use Outlook for email, Slack for direct messaging, and Zoom for video chats. Some of the developers have additional forms of communication they prefer, like Jira and Zeppelin. Our UX team does its design work in Sketch, but some companies will use Figma or Adobe XD. So for technical skills, you'll want to learn at least one of those 3 design programs, preferably all of them, but it's not exactly a daunting task if you learn one of them because they all pretty much function the same. Okay, so moving on to number 8. What do UI UX designers wish they knew before taking the job? I can't speak for other UI UX designers because this could vary widely by designer. But for me personally, it's how often we're put on the spot in the middle of a meeting to either make a quick design decision or give our design point of view. This can be intimidating because it goes against the typical introverted nature of a creative and the way we like to solve problems, which is to hide in a cave and ruminate. Okay, number 9. Who decides how a web page will look? A front-end developer or a UI UX designer? Depending on how you look at this, the answer is either the designer or it's both. It's the designer because the designer is the one who lays out the interface and blueprints for the future web page. It's both because in addition to mapping out the pixels, someone has to actually build the web page. And number 10, what's the difference between UI design and UX design? This might be the most commonly asked question related to UX design. UI stands for user interface and UX stands for user experience. Broadly speaking, the UI is the look and feel of the product, and the UX is a sort of high-level system of how the components of the UI interconnect. For example, UX design determines that a page requires a particular button, and UI design determines how that button will appear in its various states. That's it for the Q&A. As promised at the beginning, if you're wondering why I'm focusing on UX videos right now despite my rant in my starting over video, it's simply because all of my non-UX video ideas take way too long to produce and I want to produce more than one video a month. So I'm pretty much just going to recycle ideas from my channel's previous phase, but with better production quality. That is until I come up with ideas that are actually interesting.